Here is our first artwork for the Roman Imperial period. It is titled Portrait of Augustus as General from Prima Porta. It also is referred to as simply Augustus Prima Porta. Now, as I said, in 27 BCE, Octavian, Julius's adopted son, was elected imperator, which is where we get our word emperor, and thus ending 500 years of the Roman Republic. It is now an empire. At the same time, he changed his name. From Octavian to Augustus. And Augustus in Latin, because remember the Romans speak Latin, in Latin, Augustus means divine one or exalted one. This name change is extremely significant because it is not only addressing him by this new title, but it's stating his origin, that he is of divine origin. He is godlike. He is not just a man, but has been given this right to rule over us, the people of Rome, because the gods want him to. Now remember, as I said before, for the Romans, they really think that the gods have a clear and constant, direct, intimate connection with them in their everyday lives. Every house has their household altars. There are regular city and state held processions, parades, sacrifices for the gods and goddesses. Remember that they think happy gods and goddesses, happy people of Rome. So he, Octavian, now Augustus, is proclaiming himself to be an interconnection between the gods and the people of Rome. His name, Octavian, it was a very basic name, right? It was kind of like, every guy named Chris. And then when he changes his name, it's like, don't call me Chris, now call me the divine one. It's a very big status change. And we're going to see the word Augustus and Caesar used over and over again throughout the Roman Empire, throughout the period, the time of the Roman Empire, as not only names, but as titles. So I want to introduce you to Augustus as a person, but also as this concept, a title, the divine one. Before we look at the artwork in a little bit more detail, check out the period style. Right there. It's imperial. Imperial is the adjective for empire. And just like we did with the Greek world, we had classical, high classical, late classical period styles, right? We didn't just lump them all together as classical. We're going to do that here with the Roman Empire. We're going to have imperial, and then high imperial, and late imperial. Does that make sense? It'll make sense as we continue through the empire. But let's look at this guy a little bit closer without the distractions of those words. What do we see here? We see its depiction of our first Roman emperor, Octavian, now Augustus, the divine one. And he has presented himself here in this official imperial portrait. This portrait was then copied multiple times, and this statue was dispersed all over the empire. These were visual strategies or visual tools to tell us, the people of Rome, who are scattered all over this large expanse of land, how he rules, who he is, and why he is our ruler. So let's look at the details of this, because remember, imagine a copy of this would have been set up throughout various important cities in the empire. One more thing. The reason that this one is called Augustus Prima Porta is because this specific statue was found at the site called Prima Porta. So it's Augustus. This is the one that was at a Prima Porta, but there were lots all over the empire. Okay, so now get back into your Roman mindset. You are a Roman citizen. You're walking through the streets of your city, and you see this statue, of our new Roman emperor and our new Roman Empire, right? We have this identity crisis already of being a soldier and a farmer. And now we have an empire. Who is this guy? Remember, this is before social media. So we don't get to see these people on a regular basis. We don't ever get to actually look at this person because they're hanging out in Rome and we're way over here in Egypt or we're way up in England. So how do we understand who this person is and how they are ruling us and why they are ruling us? Through images like this. Propaganda. Back to our first weeks in the ancient Mesopotamian world. Remember those steles? The stele of Naram-Sin, the stele with the law code of Hammurabi. These are all the same ideas and principles of visual propaganda. You see it to understand your ruler. We're going to look at this guy to understand who Augustus is and who we are as an empire. Well, first off, what's he wearing? We would immediately recognize what he's wearing as a soldier's uniform. Roman soldiers had a metal breastplate, covered the front and the back, and underneath that they would wear a short cloth toga that would come to the knee. And that toga is also a skirt. Now you might be thinking, skirt, guys, yeah, right. Think about it. A skirt allows you to have a lot of mobility. You can raise up a leg and kick somebody with your skirt and not have to worry about ripping a seam in your pants. Okay, so walking through the city, we see the statue. Young guy. How old is he? How old do you think he is? Imagine we're in class. I'm going to ask you. How old do you think he is? Students will say, 20. 25. Here, let me zoom in on his face. How old do you think he is? Look at his body. You know how to read people. You read people all the time. Come on now. Don't act like you don't make quick judgments of people. 30 at the latest? Okay, so he's a young man. Is he healthy? Yeah, he looks healthy and strong. Yeah, check out that bicep. Yeah, look at those legs. He doesn't skip leg day. Okay. So we got a young, fit man, and he's wearing a soldier's uniform, which means he's probably a soldier. Augustus, Octavian, he was. Okay. But what's this like fabric that's wrapped around him? The fabric that's wrapped around him is a senator's robe. And again, if we were alive at this time, we would easily recognize this robe as a senator's robe. Okay. Why is a soldier wearing a senator's robe? Well, because he's both. He is both a soldier and a government official. He's telling us here he knows how to fight. He can fight and kill, defeat his enemies. And he knows how to lead. He knows how to govern. Wearing that senator's robe shows the idea of him being the leader who implements laws and justice and can be there for the everyday maintenance of this empire. Do you see that parallel? The difficult identity of a Roman, to be a soldier and a farmer, to be a soldier and the senator. So here he is seamlessly showing how he can be both. His posture. Look at those legs. What posture is he standing in? It's a vocab term. It symbolizes a balanced body and a balanced mind. So what is it? I know, I heard you. You said it. It's contrapposto. Aha! So we see a Roman statue of our Roman emperor, but he's standing like a Greek statue, the Spear Bearer by Polykleitos. Wait. Why is he standing like that? Well, Why would you ask that, student? You know! I just told you, it's contrapposto. Polykletos is using contrapposto to show a balance of body and mind. We are then supposed to immediately translate that for Augustus. He is a leader who is of balanced body and mind. The health of his body, the balance of his body is a visual reflection of the health and balance of his mind. Nice, right? Yes. Now, what else about his body position? He's got his hand up, his right hand up, and then in his left hand, he's not holding a spear. In fact, historians are unsure what he was holding, but the way he's holding it indicates it not to be a spear, but some have suggested it was a rod. The rod is often referred to as a dictatum. A dictatum is used as a way to dictate or to delegate things. You pointed at people. It comes from the word for Latin for dicere, to speak. Also the word for dictator, decision. So what we have here is a rod that shows he speaks, he makes decisions, the dictatum. And then with his other hand, he's got it outstretched in a manner which many have suggested to be similar to an orator. An orator? You mean a guy that does public speaking? You mean like what we saw with Eule Metele? Oh, hi, Eule. Remember from that transition from the Etruscan into the Roman Republic, we saw this very Roman occupation of being a public speaker, and same body position here. So Eule Metele was addressing the people, right? As a magistrate, he was there to connect with the people and to communicate with them and the authorities. Let's now apply that to Augustus. He stands here addressing the people, us, the people of Rome, and he serves to communicate the authority and the needs of the people. So we have a leader in Augustus that is both a soldier and a senator. He can lead with force, but he can also lead with justice. He is of balanced mind, balanced body. He is one who speaks. He has the authority to make those decisions in that stick. And he is open and communicative with the people of Rome. He sees us. It's very powerful visual elements, right? Let's look a little bit closer at, well, what is it? Before we look a little bit closer, I want us to also add onto the statue the fact that it would have been painted. Remember, just as we've seen prior to this, all of these stone artworks that look like these pristine white marble, no, they were painted. They were painted to be more lifelike. And we have evidence of pigmentation in not only this statue, but other Roman statues that would have been out on public display, that they were painted. Here, just as a kind of reference point, this is not the statue of Augustus, but it's helping us understand how flesh tones would be painted. Elements like the eyebrows, the hair, the lips would all have had some kind of tonality. Now, keeping this in mind, I'm going to show you another artist's rendering of what we think this would have looked like when it was fully painted. And I'm giggling because I think I can guess your reaction. Hold on one moment. What do you think? Don't laugh. Come on, you guys. This is serious. This is art. This is art history. So, based on pigmentation residue within the stone, we understand that he would have been painted, and many of these elements that get lost in the whiteness of the marble would have been easier to spot and highlight. So we see that drapery of the robe, we see his hair, we see the definition of the soldier's uniform. I put here that, I know it kind of looks pinkish, but I put here that it's supposed to be a purple robe. The fabric he's wearing has been dyed purple. And I want you to write this in your notes. Purple equals important person. Just write it. I'll explain why. Purple is a very expensive dye. The natural resources to make purple pigment that then you can dye your fabrics in is a very difficult and hard to come by and therefore expensive raw material. In the ancient world, purple was such a rare and I guess again I can say rare, therefore expensive and luxury item. For cloth to be dyed that, there were laws saying that only certain people could have purple cloth. These certain people had to be of elevated status because not only could they afford it, but it indicated their role in society. So here, Augustus is draped in a purple senator's robe, and we would have, as Roman citizens, immediately understood, purple is only for important people. I cannot get purple. I know your next question, student. Why is purple so important? Why is it so expensive? Because it's made from snails. More specifically, sea snails. There are very few varieties of these sea snails, but here I'm showing you a diagram of the types of sea snails and the fabrics that they make. Now again, you're such a smart, inquisitive student. I know you're asking, wait a minute, how does the snail become purple dye? Okay, imagine a snail. It's got its shell, right? And then it's got the gooey, slimy snail. Well, inside of these specific types of snails, they have a purple filament, a purple pigment in them. And in order to get that purple pigment, collect it, to then be used to make purple dye and dye these purple fabrics. Are you following me? Sea snails, purple filament in there is used to dye the fabric. But in order to get that purple filament, you have to collect all of these tiny snails, and then you have to crush their shell and then delicately pull out that purple filament. It's a really difficult manual labor project. So the resource is difficult to come by. The pulling out of that purple filament is a difficult process. And then you need a lot of this tiny snail's purple filament in order to dye one bolt of fabric. We have found at ancient work sites around the Mediterranean coast mountains of these snail shells that have been systematically crushed and then that purple filament pulled out and reserved for making the purple dye. Who would have been doing this? Slaves, of course. But it is still a difficult process, and therefore purple as a dye is a limited resource, and therefore for the few and very important people. Okay? So we see this purple robe wrapped around him. We would have immediately understood that as extremely important. And I'm pushing this pretty hard here, purple equals important, because it's going to be something that we're going to see after the Roman Empire. This concept of purple as being important carries through into the medieval world and even into today. Oftentimes you'll hear people talking about royal purple. Royal purple goes all the way back to the ancient world where we had to get these little sea snails to make purple fabric. Does that make sense? Okay. So we've got Augustus. He's painted to look much more realistic. Therefore, all of the tiny details would have shown through much clearly. Let's think about what's on that breastplate. On the breastplate, or if you want to use the Latin term for it, cuirass, on his cuirass, we see a diplomatic victory in which, under the rule of Augustus, the Roman soldiers were able to come to a peace agreement with their neighbors in the east, the Parthians. Now, the Parthians lived in an area called Parthia, which is now northwest Iran. And this juncture here, we, the people of Rome, would immediately recognize, here is our Roman soldier. And then this man here, we would recognize as a Parthian. And he is giving back a Roman standard. It is a staff with the Roman legion or the Roman army's symbol, the golden eagle. So what we have here is a moment of agreement where our enemy who we have fought in battle, we have come to a peace agreement, a peace treaty. And this happened under the rule of Augustus. Around this historical moment, we see the gods of the Roman pantheon celebrating. So we see the immediate connection between happy gods, or I should say, good things happen in Rome because the gods are happy. The gods celebrate and reward us with these good things. Why would a soldier show not a battle, but a moment of a diplomatic victory? Because, let me go back up here. Let me ask that question again. Why would Augustus show on his soldier's uniform not a battle scene in which he's cutting off heads? Instead, he shows a diplomatic victory. Why do you think that is? You don't know? Think about it. Why would a man who has shown himself to be victorious in battle also showing you a diplomatic victory? Well, diplomatic means one of negotiation, talk, compromise. So what he's saying here is that he is a soldier and that he can fight, he can shed blood, but he's also of balanced mind, and he can understand when it's more advantageous, it's more to our betterment to not shed blood, to compromise, to find an agreement. So us, the people of Rome, we look at the statue and we go, he's such a good leader. Balanced mind, balanced body. He can fight and kill, but he can also find peace and compromise and make these diplomatic treaties with our enemies. And he also can govern us as a senator, as a ruler. Great, great. Now I showed you also his face here. And you said that he's in his 20s, early 30s. Did you know that when this was sculpted, this official portrait of Augustus was sculpted, he was in his 60s. This doesn't look like a 6-year-old man. It looks like a young man. Why? It's not that Romans were afraid of young men they weren't afraid of old men. Because remember the Roman Republic? Veristic portraits? Those were the qualities of a Roman man. The virtues, right? Was to show him to be aged, experienced, loyal. So it's not like he's trying to airbrush himself because youth sells or sex sells. Because we valued, for 500 years, we valued age, wisdom, and all that comes with it. And we wanted to see that. So why is a 60-year-old Augustus making himself look so young? This is because it's not just Augustus. This is an empire that is young. So when we see this portrait of our leader, we are immediately supposed to see this as a portrait of us, a new, young, optimistic, hopeful, healthy empire. Wow, right? So we're seeing this not just as a portrait of him as a ruler, but as us, as an empire. And I want you to keep that concept, because we're going to watch as official royal portraits, official imperial portraits of the emperors continue through the empire. We're going to see this change. Now, one last thing. Let me scroll back down. What's up with this kid down here? What's up with the fat baby hanging out at the side of Augustus's leg? You may have noticed it. I'm sorry for all my scrolling, but here, look at that. Wait, what is this kid doing here? It's not just any kid, it's a little fat baby with wings? Why does Augustus have a little fat baby with wings next to him? Well, it's not a little fat baby with wings. It's Cupid. Cupid is the Roman name for the Greek god Eros, god of love. What is the god of love doing hanging out with our new emperor? This goes back to a legend of the, not like a legend. Okay, Julius Caesar, Augustus's dad, believed that his lineage went all the way back to legendary proportions. What am I trying to say? Julius Caesar believed that his great 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 grandmother was Venus, or Aphrodite, goddess of love and sex and beauty. Therefore, Cupid, who is the son of Venus, is here because they're family. Augustus and Cupid are related. And so we see this uniting of Augustus with the gods on a familial level. They are family. The gods are quite literally by his side as he takes on this new empire. Now, Cupid is rising up on the back of a dolphin. I know it doesn't look like a dolphin, but take my word for it, it's a dolphin. And this, our historians believe, to be a reference to his defeat, Augustus's defeat of Mark Antony on the sea. So it's like him saying, you remember what's up? I defeated Mark Antony. The gods were on my side. The gods wanted me to do this and be your emperor. So looking back at the entirety of this image, he's telling us a lot, isn't he? He is of sound mind and body. He's healthy. He's young and optimistic, just like us in this empire. He can rule with force as a soldier. He can also rule with logic and reason as a governor or a senator. He has the gods by his side. And he's related to the gods, and that is why he's called Augustus, the divine one. He sees us. He speaks to us. He doesn't hold up in some kind of far off, palace. He presents himself, sees our problems, and he dictates or says or speaks or decides for the betterment of us, the people of Rome. Now, this might seem like a big stretch for one leader to hold, but there is a term for this period of time under the rule of Augustus, and it is your next period style, or it is your next vocabulary term. Here. Pax Romana. Also, you can hear it and see it referred to as Pax Augustae. Pax is Latin for peace. So Pax Romana means Roman peace. More specifically, people will use it during the time or the rule of Augustus and say Augustan peace, Pax Augustae. This time, the time under the rule of Augustus, is defined as a time of peace and harmony. Now, obviously, that is a relative term. There's still going to be, crime. There's still going to be disputes. There's still going to be disease and hardships. But in consideration to what just had happened during the Civil War, this was a time of relative peace and harmony. There was unity within the empire. under the rule of Augustus, he, let me look at my notes, he established a universal coinage system. So he established a single unit of Roman money. Before that, various provinces or areas within the empire had their own money systems, which would cause a lot of chaos. Think about when you travel internationally, you have to change your money, those currency exchanges. What are the rates? Am I getting a good deal? Am I being gypped? So one system of money for the entire empire unifies, harmonizes the market. Okay. Under Augustus, he established what we would understand to be a police force and a fire force or firefighters. Before that, prior to that, these were not controlled legal systems. And here under Augustus, we have these patrolling police officers and we have these dedicated, trained professionals who will fight fires. Yes, fires were a big deal, especially in the cities. This is prior to electricity. So if you wanted a light in the middle of the night, you had to light an open flame. And one little spark from one little chimney, from one little fireplace, goes up into the air, whole city's gone. So again, relative peace and harmony. Now we have trained professionals who are there to help with fighting of fires. What else? He went through and did a larger census of the people, and he established a tax collecting system that discouraged corruption and extorting of money from other local officials. He did a lot. He did a lot. This video is just getting way too crazy, too long. So let's move on to our next artwork. But keep this in mind, this mentality of being a Roman citizen under this new, young idea of an empire.